Welcome to today's class. Today we shall consider the topic computer hardware. When we say computer hardware, what is it? We can say computer hardware refers to the tangible part or the physical part of a computer system that can be touched and that can also be seen. These components will work together to process, store, and communicate information. There are several examples of computer hardware we can think of. Those that belong to the storage, like the RAM, the ROM, the processors. We can talk about the processors also. We can talk about input devices, the mouse, the keyboard, the scanners. We can also talk about output devices, the monitor, the printer, and many others we can also talk about under hardware, like the CPU fan, our system unit, the base, the buses, and all those can be talked about under computer hardware. Today's lesson, we shall focus on the first two, which is the storage and the processors. Now, when we talk about storage, we can think of two terminologies there, which is the storage media or the storage medium. When we say media, it's a plural form of medium. Singular is medium, plural is media. So when we say storage media, what are we looking at? Those are the physical devices on which information can be stored and used at a later date. And then when we say storage device, it is the hardware or the device that writes data to or reads data from a storage medium. So one will hold or store the data itself, and one will allow us to write data onto the storage medium, or it will allow us to read data from the storage medium. So we read data from the storage medium or we write data onto the storage medium. So these are two significant terminologies we need to be aware of. Now, when it comes to storage too, there are two main technologies to talk about: the magnetic and the optical or the laser. Now, we shall talk about temporary storage media. Temporary storage media. Now, this will allow us to store instructions that are waiting to be processed or to be obeyed. It also allows us to store instructions that are being processed, and it will also as well allow us to store information awaiting output. So three key things to observe under the temporary storage media. It allows data to be stored waiting to be processed, data or instructions that are being processed are also stored, and data or instructions awaiting output are also stored. Temporary storage media, as we know, can be referred to as the main memory or the primary memory or the RAM, which we typically refer to as the random access memory. So there is a picture of a RAM on our screen. Now, the other type of the storage media is the permanent storage media, which operates in opposite form of the temporary storage media. So when we say permanent storage media, what are you referring to? So these are those that store instructions or data or programs when they are not being used in the main memory. So whereas the RAM will store data or instructions that are being used, permanent will store instructions or programs or data that are not being used by the main memory. Permanent storage media can also be referred to as the auxiliary media or secondary media, backing store, or they're commonly referred to as ROM. Now, permanent storage media has the following characteristics. It stores data in a long term or for a long time as compared to the RAM, and we can say it is also non-volatile. So it still keeps its data even though you get power off or power out, it still keeps its data as compared to the RAM, which loses its data when there is power out or power outage. So like I said earlier, storage media have these following technologies. It can be magnetic, optical, and then these days we have the third one, which is the flash media. So magnetic storage media, we can talk about the magnetic tapes, and under that we can talk about cassettes. Those of us who are old enough knows about cassette. This uses the magnetic technology in keeping data. We can also talk about tape cartridges. Then we also have the magnetic discs, which is different from the magnetic tape. Under the magnetic discs, we can talk about the diskettes, which we use to call floppy diskettes or floppy disks. These are quite old, quite obsolete. We don't have it in the system these days. Under magnetic disks, we can also talk about hard disks, and then we can also talk about zip disks. So pictures of them can also be found. These belong to the magnetic tape, the cassette and tape cartridges, and these pictures also belong to the magnetic disks. We have the floppy disks, the hard disks, and we have the zip disks. So under magnetic disks, where we mention diskette or floppy disks. Now, what is it? These are removable magnetic disk medium that holds up to only about 1.44 megabytes of information. It holds a very small amount of data or information, less than even 2 megabytes. Then the next higher one under magnetic disk is the zip disk, which is higher than the floppy disk. So it has higher capacity than the floppy disk, and it can come in three capacities or in three sizes: the 100 megabytes, 250 megabytes, and 750 megabytes. Now the biggest among these is the hard disks. The hard disks, the one that we mostly have in our system unit. So it is a magnetic storage medium, usually fixed inside the system unit. consisting of one or more thin platters that store data or information. Now, hard disks store data or information in higher volumes as compared to the diskettes or the floppy disks and the zip disks. This allows us to store data even in gigabytes, far more than the megabytes. Hard disks use multiple platters stacked on a spindle. Each platter has two read-write heads, which has one for each side. Now, it is important to note that for a disk or a hard disk to be used, it needs to be formatted. So we look at formatting a disk. Now, before a magnetic disk can be used, it must be formatted. And when we format it, what are we doing? It is a process that marks the disk surface and determines how data will be stored. Now, during formatting, the drive will create circular tracks around or on the disk surface. And then these circular tracks will be divided into what we call sectors. Now, the operating system organizes these sectors into clusters, and then it will track each file's allocation according to the cluster it occupies. So it will first of all create circular tracks on the surface of the disk, and then divide the tracks into what we call sectors. And then the OS will also group these sectors into what we call clusters, where our file's location will be stored. Now, we have what we call disk area. When a disk is formatted, the operating system creates 4 areas on its surface, and we shall look at these 4 areas. The first is the boot sector. So it is the part of the disk surface that stores the master boot record. Master boot record is a small program that runs when you first boot the computer. So when you turn your system unit on, the hard drive has this area that we call the master boot record, which will contain program that runs when the computer is booted on. Then we also have the FAT, the file allocation table, which is a log that records each file's location and each sector's status. The status as to whether a cluster is free to allow for data to be stored, or as to whether it is allocated. That means that cluster or that surface area is already storing data. So it keeps a log of records. Then the next one is the root folder, which enables the user to store data on a disk in a logical way. So we can create folders, subfolders, and so on and so forth. Then we have the data area. So that is the actual portion on the disk where the data is stored. So there is a pictorial view of a formatted disk. We also have a hard disk here. Then we also look at the optical storage. The optical storage. These are plastic discs on which information is stored, deleted, or changed using the laser light technology. Data is stored by burning pitch onto the disk surface that can be read using a laser beam. So normally when we are transferring data onto a disk, we typically call it we are burning. So when we say we are burning, what are we doing? We are burning pitch onto the disk surface, which can later be read using a laser beam. Now, these optical discs are typically 4.5-inch sizes, but can also come in different shapes and in different sizes. With optical storage, data is stored optically on a continuous spiral track. Optical storage comes in the form of CDs, compact discs, DVDs, that's digital versatile discs or digital video discs, or BDs, that is the Blu-ray discs. So all of these come under the optical storage media. So we have a bit of information for CD, the compact discs. They typically store 700 megabytes of data. It has about 600 tracks per linear inch of disk surface. A laser beam is needed to detect the presence or absence of pitch which have been burned onto the surface. And then it comes as three types. The CD-ROM, that's the compact disc read-only memory. The CDR, compact disc recordable. The CDRW, the compact disc rewritable. So compact disc read-only memory, it allows for us to put data on it, and it cannot be edited. It cannot be changed. You can only read from the disc. So that is why it goes by the name compact disc read-only memory. So the information here says read-only memory means you can only view the information or the data, but you cannot edit it. You cannot change what is stored there. Cannot be written to or erased, and typically hold 650 megabytes of data or information. The next to look at is CDR, compact disc recordable, which can also be termed as the WORM, write once, read many. So the acronym WORM, write once, read many. So it's an optical disc that can be written to only once, but you can read from it as many times as you want. So once the data is written, you cannot change. It can also hold up to 700 megabytes of data or information. Then we talk about compact disc rewritable. It can also be termed as the erasable optical disc. An optical disc on which files can be saved, changed, and deleted as often as desired. So as the name implies, rewritable, compact disc rewritable. So with this, you can store store data on it, and you can change it as often as you want. Unlike the compact disc ROM, where you cannot do any change to the data, with this you can rewrite it or you can change it as and when you want. Then another type of the optical disc is the photo CD, which is a specialized format for digital photography and music. They are multi-section, which means images can be added at any time. And this type of CD can hold about 100 quality images. Then the next one, which is also common, is what we call the digital video disc or the digital versatile disc. Unlike the CD that can store about 700 megabytes, this can store in gigabytes from 4.7 gigabytes to 17 gigabytes of data or information. These also come in three types: the DVD-ROM, the DVD-R, then the DVD-RW. So by now, I believe you know all these abbreviations, so you can apply them here. DVD-ROM, digital video disc read-only memory. DVD-R, digital video disc recordable. DVD-RW, digital video disc rewritable. So DVD-ROM. So the same principle applies here. It's a read-only memory, which means you can read or view the data and cannot edit it. So you cannot write or you cannot erase once the data is put on it. Then the DVD recordable. So this is an optical disc that can be written to only once. So once it is written to, then it cannot be changed. Then we have the DVD rewritable, which allows the data or files to be rewritten or to be changed as many times as it pleases you. Then another type of special disc is what we call the Blu-ray Discs. This uses a blue laser to record more data onto a disc, which is of the same physical size as a DVD, but can store far more data than the DVD. In terms of the physical size, it looks the same, but the amount of data, the magnitude of data that this Blu-ray can store far outweighs that of the DVD and the CD. Conventional Blu-ray discs will typically contain 25 gigabytes. The dual layer disc will contain 50 gigabytes, triple 100 megabytes, then quadruple layers will contain 128 gigabytes. So we have some pictures of the optical discs here for our viewing. Another one, also some pictures for us.